After Donald Trump's lawyers were admonished following their closing argument where they made improper statements to the jury, it was the prosecution's turn. The prosecution had previously informed the judge that their closing argument was going to take approximately 4.5 hours. It took that.
Trump Hush Money Trial Day 21, a masterclass in legal comedy. On Tuesday, May 28, 2024, prosecutors presented the jury with a mountain of evidence, indicating that Donald Trump had fabricated financial records in order to conceal a scandalous report about an alleged affair that occurred just before the 2016 election.
Closing arguments concluded around 8 p.m. into the evening on Tuesday night, but folks, the jury was wide awake. They were paying attention. They actually requested to stay there to hear the prosecutor conclude the closing argument, which is I think, interesting and important sign, and the prosecution did not disappoint.
The prosecution and defense in Donald Trump's New York hush money trial concluded their closing statements in a scene more suited for a reality TV show than a courtroom. They spent hours on end on Tuesday night, presenting the jury with sharply different versions of the controversial payments made to Stormy Daniels and the vague reimbursement that Michael Cohen received the following year. In a last-ditch effort to save their client, Trump's lawyers argue that Michael Cohen, the MVP of liars, is the key to the entire case. Indeed, since that's the greatest argument they could make for the indefensible. Well, as you know, Trump and Kimmel are tight buddies, who always have a lot to say about each other. Let me show you a clip of Jimmy Kimmel when he commented on the latest trial.
Speaking of pigeons, in New York, the jury is out in the criminal trial of former President Donald Joanna Trump. The jury, they deliberated for several hours today. They'll pick back up tomorrow. Trump is not allowed to leave the courthouse while they deliberate. Today he had to sit there for hours, farting next to the vending machine.
Wait, he had more to say.
Trump is hoping for a hung jury. Of course, he was also hoping for a hung Mike Pence, but that didn't happen. And there are 34 charges. The jurors will rule on all of them. They have to be unanimous on each charge to convict or acquit. Trump knows he has no chance of acquit because he did it, because he did the crimes. But so his move and the move for all those.
Trump's legal future may eventually depend on whatever version the jury accepts. But to be honest, it's difficult to understand how anybody could believe the pathetic justifications offered by Trump and his legal team. The prosecution had every piece of fact, evidence, everything. They built a very strong case. Prosecution was actually pretty professional and prepared, unlike the defense that was only there to utter nonsense. Take a look at this video of how the prosecution had everything lined up.
While it was long, it was very, very detailed, and it went through, get this, the document.
Though it was long, it covered everything.
The evidence, the phone calls, the photographs, the bank records, the handwritten notes. One by one by one, the prosecutor, Joshua Steinglass, did not miss a beat, did not miss an exhibit, did not miss any of the meandering arguments.
Judge Juan Merchan will try to lead the jury through the complex case on Wednesday, May 29, 2024, by providing them with instructions before they start deliberating, though it's difficult to take this historic and unprecedented trial seriously, given that its star is a previous reality TV show host, who can't manage to stay out of the spotlight for the wrong reasons. It's become an important turning point in the 2024 presidential race.
Very soon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it will be time for you to deliberate. In the interest of justice and in the name of the people of the state of New York, I ask you to find the defendant, Donald J. Trump, guilty.
Well, talking about how the whole case went.
The jury left for the evening. The jury will return 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, where instructions will be provided and deliberations will commence.
Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer, was the first to speak. He spent the whole 2 hours of his closing statement discrediting Michael Cohen. Trump's former fixer Cohen was called the gloat of the greatest liar of all time by Blanche, who described him as a compulsive liar. Jury must have rolled their eyes together at this, one can only imagine. Blanche attempted to portray Cohen as a nervous babysitter rather than a major actor in a cover-up by saying, "We all know that he called Keith Schiller to whine about a 14-year-old harassing him and not blocking the number." The basis for Blanche's dispute was a string of texts that Cohen and Schiller sent at the same time, requesting assistance with the practical joker. Blanche's story was desperate and transparent at the time. Apart from Cohen's statement, Blanche argued that there was no proof linking Trump to the payment, closing his eyes and ignoring the amount of evidence that was given. Blanche told the jurors, "You can't absolutely believe Michael Cohen's words." As firmly as Trump is convinced and asserting that everything is rigged, his legal team is also saying the same thing over and over again. Take a look at this clip of Trump trying to prove his innocence.
Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. The judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job. And it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace. And I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat this.
Well, I'm glad Mother Teresa isn't here to see this. Assistant District Attorney Joshua Steinglass took the stand to undermine Blanche's feeble argument, and he did it in a very professional and real manner. Steinglass emphasized that Cohen's evidence was supported by records and other witnesses, including David Pecker, the former head of AMI. Steinglass successfully refuted Blanche's charges, stating there was ample evidence to support Cohen's involvement in Trump's schemes. Someone has to teach Trump's legal team that in court you have to present evidence. The jury can't give a decision with nonsense sob stories. Cohen wasn't picked by us from the witness shop, by reminding the jury that the defendant picked him as his fixer because he was already ready to lie and cheat. Steinglass turned the tables on Trump's team. Using some role-playing, Steinglass made fun of Blanche's argument by posing as Cohen and calling both Schiller and Trump, mixing joke conversations with reports of the hush money trial, 49 seconds, Steinglass said, stressing the call log's briefness and mocking the idea that prank calls were more important than disguising scandals.
They almost mocked Donald Trump and Trump's lawyers. Like Joshua Steinglass, the prosecutor, looked at the jury and said, "Can you believe that to this day, I'm closing argument, I couldn't believe it." They were still trying to argue that the payment to Michael Cohen was for actual legal expenses.
Moreover, watch this.
For services rendered and not for a reimbursement, despite the fact that document after document states that this was a reimbursement. The prosecutor, Joshua Steinglass, said to the jury, and the jury was laughing at this, he goes, "I was actually surprised that they were still going with."
Steinglass said that the smoking guns that demonstrated Trump's guilt were the financial records of the Trump Organization, which were handwritten by former CFO Alan Weisselberg. He called the defense's claims that these payments for the legal services rendered almost speechless, practically laughing at how absurd it was. The handwritten calculations Weisselberg did to pay Cohen back were emphasized by Steinglass, which clearly showed intent to conceal the real nature of the payments.
He goes, "I'm almost speechless that the defense is still trying to make the argument that the payments from 2017 were for legal services rendered."
Prosecutor further presented this. Take a look at this.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, take a look at the handwritten notes. It quite literally says grossed up. And it takes the amount when you add the Red Finch payments of $50,000 to the $130,000 payments, you gross it up times 2 for tax purposes, and then you eventually get to that $420,000 number.
He carefully led the jury through every aspect of the evidence, including everything from the Trump Tower meeting in 2015 to Trump's pressure on Cohen in 2018. Concealing dirty deeds was the name of the game, Steinglass stated, highlighting the central theme of Trump, Pecker, and Cohen's plot. He went into detail about how the three of them were involved in a bigger scheme to hide dirt that would be harmful to Trump's reputation and undermine the chances of winning the election. While all of this was going on, we'd expect a normal person to be extremely stressed. But Trump, my man Trump was ballsy.
As the prosecution was making their final case, Trump posted one word, boring, as if they're supposed to be entertaining him. And then because, everything in his mind is stacked against him, He seemed conveniently confused about standard courtroom procedure. He wrote, "Why is the corrupt government allowed to make the final argument in the case against me? Why can't the defense go last? Big advantage, very unfair, witch hunt, DJT."
Blanche persisted in pressing the issue of reasonable doubt, offering the jury 10 reasons to acquit Trump, each of them less convincing than the previous. He maintained that since Cohen represented Trump, the invoices and vouchers were valid, that Trump had no intention of defrauding, and that Trump was unaware of the bills. Blanche said, as if paying up a porn star weeks ahead of the election was routine, that there was no proof of any attempt to sway the outcome of the 2016 election. In an attempt to portray Trump as an innocent victim of a massive conspiracy, he ended the ridiculous claim that Cohen was biased and motivated to lie. Blanche's defensive strategy lacked logic and appeared to be a desperate attempt to save something, probably his dignity. Trump had a lot to say.
And he makes a mistake here. He makes a mistake. Let's go to what Trump posted. In all caps, quote, "The greatest case I've ever seen for reliance on counsel. And Judge Merchan will not, for whatever reason, let me use that as a defense in this rigged trial. Another term, advice of counsel."
After the conclusion of the final arguments, the 7 male and 5 female jurors will begin deliberations on Wednesday, May 29th. Judge Merchan will provide them with legal advice, and Trump and his team of legal clowns will need to be near the courtroom in case the jury takes any notes. Journalists are going to be extremely alert and prepared to document every second of this historic comedy. After several hours of testimony and 6 weeks of trial, the jury will ultimately determine whether or not Trump's ridiculous arguments are credible. Spoiler, there's a likelihood they aren't. Members of the Trump family, including Eric Trump, Laura Trump, and Donald Trump Jr., were in the courtroom during the trial. And they had a lot to say afterwards, mostly that they're white.
"I cannot wait for the day that we win. We will. We're right. The entire country knows that this is nonsense."
Did he just say they'll win because they're white?
"I cannot wait for the day that we win. We will. We're right."
The huge stakes involved were constantly brought to mind by their presence, both politically and legally. Melania and Ivanka were unusually absent, prompting speculation and debate. In an attempt to humanize that former president and win over the jury, the defense brought up the Trump family. However, the evidence against Trump continued to be the major focus of the proceedings. Thus, it appeared that this tactic had zero impact.
Melania has not shown up for any of this trial. It's too hard for her to keep a straight face.
However, his kids were there and they were making rounds on the internet.
The kids were there. Don Jr. put on his fighting chin to defend his dad against mean old Bobby De Niro.
They bring in Robert De Niro, who was shot down, but apparently he needs attention because it's been a while since he's cranked out a good movie. But think about it. They bring out one actor. Remember in 2020 when every A-list actor in the world showed up?
This trial is about more than simply the alleged hush money payments. It's a deeper examination of the conduct and deeds of a former president. The trial's verdict may have significant impact on both Trump's political future and the 2024 presidential election. With new information and dramatic situations emerging every day, the trial has captured the public's interest. This is one of the most watched court cases in recent history, because of the extensive media coverage that has made sure every move is examined and discussed. With the conclusion of this courtroom comedy, we say goodbye to what has surely been the year's biggest reality TV event. More drama, absurdity, and unintentional humor have sprung up from Trump's hush money trial than any planned television program could hope to produce. The never-ending supply of absurdity from Trump's incompetent legal staff to the absurd arguments they've devised has served meme creators worldwide. Whether you like him or not, Trump and his group have offered an unmatched quality of entertainment. Though we shall miss watching this bizarre tale every day, we can be confident that